Russia-Ukraine war, list of key events, day 708. Fighting. A Russian bomb hit a hospital in northeastern Ukraine, forcing the evacuation of dozens of patients, smashing windows and damaging equipment. Volodymyr Timoshko, head of the Kharkiv regional branch of the National Police, said the bomb made a direct hit on the hospital in the town of Veliki Burluk, northeast of Kharkiv, and a second bomb landed nearby. 4 people were slightly injured. Ukraine's air defenses shot down 14 out of 20 drones launched by Russia in an overnight attack that injured 1 person and damaged commercial buildings. The Air Force said the Iranian-made Shahed drones and 3 Iskander missiles targeted 5 Ukrainian regions in the south and the east. Russia said it destroyed 20 missiles launched by Ukraine over the Black Sea and the Crimean Peninsula, which Moscow invaded in 2014 and then annexed. Ukraine's Air Force commander Mykola Oleshchuk said its forces struck the Belbek military airfield in Crimea. He did not go into detail. Politics and diplomacy. Russia and Ukraine exchanged hundreds of prisoners of war. Russia's defense ministry said 195 of its soldiers were freed, while Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said 207 people, including some civilians, had been returned to Ukraine. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz told his country's parliament that he would rally European partners to deliver support for Ukraine that was so huge it would weigh on Russian President Vladimir Putin. His comments came ahead of a key European Union summit on €50 billion, $54 billion, of funding for Ukraine that is being blocked by Hungary. Victoria Nuland, the United States Acting Deputy Secretary of State, visited Kyiv and said she was encouraged by Ukraine's strengthening defenses and that Moscow should expect some surprises on the battlefield. A U.S. military aid package for Ukraine is being held up in Congress by Republicans who want to link it to policy changes at the U.S. border. Nuland said she was confident it would be adopted. The International Court of Justice, ICJ, rejected much of a case filed by Ukraine that accused Russia of bankrolling separatist rebels in eastern Ukraine a decade ago, saying only that Moscow had failed to investigate alleged breaches. Boris Nadezhdin submitted his bid to run for the Russian presidency in March's election after delivering 105,000 signatures backing his campaign to the Central Election Commission, CEC. The 60-year-old has emerged as a prominent critic of the Kremlin and promised to end the war in Ukraine. Weapons. The EU's foreign policy chief Josep Borrell admitted that the EU's promise to supply Ukraine with 1 million artillery shells by March would fall short, with just over half that number expected to be delivered by that deadline. The remaining 155mm artillery shells are likely to be delivered by the end of the year, Borrell said. Russia-Ukraine war at a glance. Russia-Ukraine war at a glance, what we know on day 706. Russia's defense ministry said on Monday that its forces had taken control of the village of Tabavka in Ukraine's Kharkiv region, but Ukraine denied this. Volodymyr Fedyo, head of communications for Ukraine's ground forces, said, "This does not correspond to reality. There are battles taking place near this locality." The U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, warned on Monday that Ukraine's gains over 2 years of fighting were all in doubt without new U.S. funding, as NATO's chief visited to lobby Congress. The European Parliament is investigating claims that one of its members spied for Russia's FSB since at least 2004. Tatyana Zdanoka, a Latvian MEP, has denied allegations published by The Insider, a Russian investigative newspaper, which put together the story along with Estonia's Delfi, Latvia's Rebaltica and Sweden's Expressen. Insider alleged emails between Zdanoka and Russian case officers included reports on her work as a European legislator, including fostering pro-Kremlin sentiment. In March 2022, Zdanoka was one of just 13 MEPs out of 705 in the parliament who voted against condemning Russia's war on Ukraine. Politico quoted a European Parliament official as saying investigations have been opened into the allegations, which were taken very seriously. In a video on Facebook, Zdanoka said, "I have never been associated with the KGB, and I have not cooperated with any other intelligence agencies." Representatives of the EU member states will meet on Monday evening to discuss funding for Ukraine as pressure mounts on Viktor Orban to agree. An aide to Orban said the Hungarian PM said he was open to a proposed €50 billion, $54 billion, aid package and had sent a proposal with caveats to Brussels. The Ukrainian foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba, met his Hungarian counterpart, Petr Szijjártó, in western Ukraine on Monday. Russia-Ukraine war, list of key events. Fighting. At least 18 people were killed and more than 130 injured after Russia targeted Ukraine's major cities in a wave of missile strikes, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said. Russia launched nearly 40 missiles of different types in another combined strike to try to circumvent our air defense system, he said in a somber evening address warning the death toll could rise. 8 people were killed in Kharkiv, Ukraine's second biggest city, which was hit by 3 waves of attacks. Dozens of Kyiv residents were also injured after Russian missiles hit apartment blocks in the capital. Celeste Wallander, an assistant secretary of defense at the United States Pentagon, said the Russian missile and drone attacks were part of an attempt by Moscow to find weaknesses in Ukraine's military while additional U.S. funding for security assistance is tied up in Congress. Russia's defense ministry claimed its air assault on Ukraine targeted companies producing weapons, missiles and ammunition and had been successful. Asked by reporters about the raids and civilian casualties, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the Russian military does not hit social facilities and residential neighborhoods and does not hit civilians. Politics and diplomacy. Turkey's parliament voted 287 to 55 to ratify Sweden's NATO membership after more than a year of delays that frustrated Western efforts to show resolve in the face of Russia's war on Ukraine. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg welcomed the Turkish move and said he was counting on Hungary to complete its national ratification as soon as possible. Hungary's populist Prime Minister Viktor Orban said earlier he had invited his Swedish counterpart Ulf Kristersson to Budapest to negotiate the accession deal. Russia rejected allegations that it had forcibly deported Ukrainian children to Russia. Ukraine has said that 20,000 children have been forced to move to Russia since the war erupted in February 2022. The International Criminal Court last year issued arrest warrants for Russian President Vladimir Putin and his children's commissioner over the transfers. The U.S. Central Intelligence Agency released a Russian-language video to try and persuade Russian intelligence employees to switch sides and work as double agents for Washington, amid perceived disaffection over the war in Ukraine. The documentary 20 Days in Mariupol was nominated for an Oscar. The film recounts the Russian siege and brutal capture of the Ukrainian port city in 2022. Weapons. NATO signed a €1 billion, $1.2 billion deal to buy 220,000 rounds of 155mm artillery shells for Ukraine. The shells are not expected to arrive in the country for 2 to 3 years. Coordinated raids in 5 European countries led to the arrest of 3 people in the Netherlands suspected of breaking sanctions to export technological and lab equipment to Russia that could have military uses, EU judicial agency Eurojust said. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin opened a monthly meeting of about 50 nations that coordinate support for Ukraine against Russia, but did not announce any new U.S. aid for Kyiv. Funding has been blocked by Republicans who want more action on U.S. border issues. Austin joined the meeting from home where he is recovering from surgery for prostate cancer. Russia-Ukraine war, list of key events. Russia said it would take all necessary measures to defend its citizens and key infrastructure from Ukrainian attacks. On Sunday, 2 alleged Ukrainian drones hit a major Baltic Sea terminal starting a fire. Towns near the border, including Belgorod, have also come under fire with at least 21 people killed in an attack at the end of last year. Kyiv said it shot down 8 Russian attack drones launched against southern and central regions of the country. Politics and diplomacy. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov clashed with the United States and Ukraine at a United Nations Security Council meeting where Moscow ruled out any peace plan backed by Kyiv and its Western allies, and China warned that further global chaos could impact the slowing global economy. Lavrov dismissed Kyiv's peace plan as a road to nowhere. On a visit to Kyiv, Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk promised to keep supporting Ukraine against